Hey, what's up guys? My name is John Huang, and today I'll be walking you through my SM7B vocal chain. For years, I used to struggle so much with learning how to mix the SM7B to the point where I considered returning the mic, but day after day, mix after mix, tweak after tweak, I was listening to my vocal mix one day and I realized that I was actually extremely satisfied with my vocal mix. At that moment, that's when I knew the war was over. But anyways, enough talking, let's get into the DAW. I'm going to show y'all what it sounds like already mixed.
Baby, I'm slipping. It all just fades away, 'cause they just ain't the same.
Okay, you get the gist, so I'm going to go ahead and turn off all my effects, and we'll go one by one. That song is called Am I the One to Blame by John Huang, out on all streaming platforms if you want to listen. The first in my chain is the Waves NS1. It's a super simple but powerful noise suppressor. I usually set it around 7, just enough to clean up the background hums, room tone, or subtle computer noises without touching the actual vocal quality, cleaning up the signal right from the start. And I wouldn't push it past 7 or you'll start to lose that vocal quality. But next we have Autotune. In this instance, I'm using Wavestune Real-Time Autotune, just a personal preference. I would also use Atari's Autotune here and there. I'm just so used to the Wavestune Real-Time plugin. But I keep the correction speed around like 10 milliseconds and the note transition around 50. I feel like this gives me a natural but polished vocal tone, and it really locks me into pitch without having that robotic, overly tuned sound. For the key, I just set it to match the song. In this case, it's D major. I do want to note that I am using Melodyne on my vocals before it touches Autotune.
It all just fades away, 'cause things just ain't the same.
Next up, after tuning, I will throw on a Pro-Q 3 EQ. Any EQ will work. This is where I take out the frequencies that muddy the vocal mix. I usually high pass around 100 hertz just to remove low end rumble. Then I sweep through the frequency spectrum and notch out any harsh resonances that are sticking out. Notice that I'm not boosting here. I'm doing Subtractive EQ to make the vocal sit clean before I do any type of compression, because if there are harsh frequencies, those will get compressed and we don't want that to happen. I'll show an example of what I do. So I'll grab a frequency and I'll just solo it so that I can just hear what I'm sweeping through. So there, it's mud. I would cut that out. There's some honkiness going on here. I would cut that out. And you basically just repeat that process. And there's some, with the SM7B, I noticed there's always like really harsh frequencies in the 3K to 4K area sometimes, specifically like 2800. But yeah, that's it for my first EQ. So here I'm using the Slate digital virtual mix rack with a bunch of different plugins. This is the part where the vocal actually starts to sound like a record. And I start with the FG73 preamp, which emulates a Neve 1073. And I drive it just enough so that the vocal gets a bit of grit and color before it even hits any processing. I do this with like almost all my vocals. For EQ, I'm using the FG End. I start off with a slightly high shelf boost, just under a decibel, just to add a bit of touch of air and openness. Brings out that breathy top end of the vocal without making it sound harsh. Then I boost around 1.4 decibels, around 1.8K. This really helps the vocal cut through the mix and gives it more clarity and intelligibility. I don't know if I said that word right. And that's the area where the words like start to really pop. Next, I give about a decibel boost at 4K. This adds presence and a little bit of bite, perfect for helping the vocal sit on top of modern R&B or pop production. And then finally, I'm doing a subtle dip of about 1.7 decibels at 157 hertz to clean up any low-end muddiness from proximity effect. It keeps the vocal tight and leaves room for the bass and kick to breathe. After that comes the FG2A, which is modeled after the LA2A. It's my go-to for smooth, transparent compression. It just levels out the vocal without squashing it, keeping everything consistent and silky. We're really just aiming for about 3 decibels of compression here.
Maybe I'm slipping.
Okay, I lied. Maybe like 3 to 7 decibels of
It all
compression.
just fades away,
Next up, we're using the Monster, which is another compressor, and I'm absolutely slamming it. But I'm using it as parallel compression because I'm basically crushing a duplicate version of the vocal and blending it back in underneath the clean signal using this mix knob. So I have the attack all the way to the fastest, release to all the way to the slowest. And by doing that, I get all the aggression, density, and forward punch from the compression without losing the natural transients or dynamics of the original take. And then finally, I am using the FGS EQ, which is a cleaner SS style EQ. Here I'm doing a bit of 10K boost, 2 decibels of 10K, a little bit more 4K. I don't know why I'm doing it here instead of here. You could have done it more over here, but and then at 1.15K, I'm taking out about a little over a decibel because I found that frequency kind of harsh to the ear. And after that, at 300 hertz, I'm doing about 2 decibels of gain just to warm up the vocal, and I switched this to a bell. Here, I'm just doing de-essing with the FabFilter Pro-Q. I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory, but I'm doing it in 2 different regions, one from 5.6K to 13K, and then here I'm doing it again, 8K to 13K. I'm not going to really go into there, but taking out the harsh S's. This is one of my favorite vocal tools of all time, Waves RVox, everyone. It's simple, but it just works, and I'm pulling it down to about -10.
It all just fades away, 'cause things just ain't.
But yeah, I'm pulling it down to about -10. Pulling too much can actually overly squash your vocal, so make sure to use your ears. With the RVox, it gives me this upfront, tight, and consistent vocal sound that just puts the vocal like in your face, and it does a really good job at doing that. And the built-in gate cleans up breaths and background noise, and the compressor just has that natural forward push that locks the vocal in front of the mix like every single time. Then I top it off with the Slate Fresh Air. This plugin is free, I believe. It should still be free. Whenever I got it, it was free. And what the Fresh Air does is adds that sparkle and sheen. And I've got both the mid air and the high air set to around 5, just enough to open up the high end without getting too harsh. Be careful not to overdo this because it can get overly bright and harsh if you push too much. I don't know why I said that funny.
'Cause things just ain't the same. Oh.
Fresh Air kind of works like a dynamic exciter. Instead of just boosting EQ, it enhances the upper harmonics only when they need it. That's why the vocals stay silky even when it's bright. And then here I'm just doing another de-esser, de-essing about 3200. That frequency was pretty sharp, and I'm just throwing on a utility just to bring the volume down. Finally, these last 2 EQs is just final cleanup. I don't remember exactly why I chose to notch out 200 hertz, but it was probably because it was muddy. And then over here, I'm just boosting 400. Also a really random move, but I think it just worked in this context. I think the 400 hertz boost just gave the vocal more body, and then I'm finishing it off with a 2 decibel high shelf at 2K.
You were here to stay. Am I the one to blame? Oh.
For the final stages, I am just sending the vocal bus into a reverb return channel. I'm using Valhalla vintage verb, nothing crazy. Have it on concert hall, 1970s color, and I'm just changing the decay, and I'm also like blending it in, by the way, using the return knobs. And then I'm using H delay, nothing crazy. You could even use like the stock Ableton delay, but just doing a quarter note delay. Finally, I'm using a shimmer. I'm using it like really subtly because you can kind of overdo this. This just adds kind of like a shimmer pad in the background, like if I were to just mute it so that you could hear it. I use it a bit more on these like vocal pads that I recorded. But yeah, it just adds kind of like sheen and shine and airiness. But yeah, that's my full SM7B vocal chain. You can definitely use this as a starting point, but again, always trust your ears. Every voice is unique. Every room colors the sound differently. The goal isn't to copy my settings, but it's to understand why they work and then tailor it to your own tone. But I hope you found this video useful. This video is probably going to get like 100 views, but it's whatever. Thanks for watching, and hit that like button and subscribe because I will make more music tutorials if people demand it. Peace.